Hello, everybody. This is Gynarchic Awakening. I have to get some minor shopping done soon, along with some bananas. But before I do that, I want to ask a question. Should Gynarchists create their own gynocentric curriculum for their children and for other Gynarchists? Now, there's a few reasons why I asked this question. The first is that I actually tried. I wrote to my local college about including Gynarchy as terminology in a political science textbook or other classes like that. And of course, at the present time, they declined the suggestion. They didn't want to hear about it, I guess, or something. I don't know what exactly was going on in their heads. I mean, these are administrators. Obviously, they may have had some more colorful words for me if we had met in isolation as opposed to communicating by way of the internet, where their words can be recorded and sent to other people. And maybe that's the reason why they didn't talk to me in the way that they maybe would have liked to, and we could have had a more candid conversation there. And probably learned more about each other's thoughts, feelings, and motives. But regardless of that, I've come to find in my personal life that if you sit on your hands and you wait around for other people to include stuff in the curriculum, you're going to be waiting a long time. As far as I know, the only real way to get access or learn about gynocentric societies is either to run into the Gynarchy community who shares information about that, or to take a college class on like anthropology or some kind of gynocentric, something that's a little more gynocentric that will go into the past where we and also explain the present and what's been going on with these societies. If you are attending kindergarten, preschool, was it preschool, kindergartens, all these different classes, K through 12, you've probably never attended a class that even attempted to do this. And then, of course, when you get to college, the vast majority of the classes that you need to take in order to get your associate's degree, your master's, it's not a requirement, which makes this even more it makes me feel even more encouraged to write a curriculum. But there's also one other problem as well, which is the marketing of kind of like marketing the concept to other people. I think a big problem with our marketing strategy is, and I remember a woman talking about this, and she was 100,000% correct, hit it on the head. She basically said that how are we supposed to attract people to the movement? How are we supposed to build it if whenever people look up the word gynarchy, it's mostly porn or fetishistic stuff? The person who doesn't have a fetishistic side, or who we call vanilla, or people who are regular, who aren't even involved in the community, they might not be particularly happy about that. But if you have a curriculum, or better yet, a textbook, a gynocentric textbook. I should have thought of that before I made this video, actually. But should Gynarchists create their own gynocentric textbook and therefore curriculum? Because I think a textbook, you can make curriculum out of a book. So it might just be a better idea to do that. But then that brings up the next question: what should a gynocentric curriculum entail? In other words, if you are going to have gynocentric curriculum, what comprises the curriculum? And I think you have to look first at the past, like the gynocentric societies of the past. I think that those have to be a big part of the curriculum. I can definitely elaborate on this later, but I think that at the very least, you need to have a foundation. I understand, and I did talk with Religion Made Simple, and you made a very good point that not everybody wants to revert to a pre-industrial stage. People want to have a lot of the modern luxuries that civilization offers. That's a fair point to make. And some of the gynocentric societies that I have been touching on are not particularly advanced in that way, or they're at a different level of development, and so um, there is a discussion to be made about how to bring gynarchy or matriarchy to modern civilization as we understand it. But when it comes to curriculum, I think that having a very sophisticated form of curriculum is important. But I also think that you have to outline the different parts of the curriculum. In other words, you have to have something that is academic in nature. Like you need citations for essentially everything. Uh, you need examples for this stuff. So the first place I would start, obviously, if I was writing, and I probably will at some point, because I was planning to be an educator, I was going to be a teacher. So I thought that part of making gynocentric curriculum would be to outline specific things for the future. Now, the first thing, obviously, is the past. So, looking at not only the current gynocentric civilizations and how they operate. In other words, that would be basically an entire chapter, which would be going into, and if you couldn't make room for it, you'd provide citations that would have their own textbooks or their own information related to this society. You could even connect it to other textbooks in anthropology and so on. And so you create the foundation, which says if this isn't just like science fiction or fantasy. And I think that's very important to open up in a curriculum, because you need to let people know that this isn't just theory crafting. This isn't just like a what if scenario. This actually happens. We do have matriarchal family units, and we do have matriarchal societies. Regardless of what other people say, what propagandists say, what some men claim, some men will actually claim there's never been a matriarchal society. That's a lie. That's not true. We know, because if you go into the field of anthropology, there's data that suggests that no, the patriarchal way isn't the only way. And of course, they want to push that because that's the societal model they prefer. And they think, oh, there's nothing to this other stuff, or it doesn't matter, or whatever their rationale is. So I think that that's the best beginning. You need to talk about not only the societies, but you need to talk about, for example, architecture, the things that people made. There's like these little statues that people carved out. Not little, some of them are big, but there are statues of like goddesses that probably are connected to Goddessian worship. And the next thing you could do, of course, is you could talk about in the curriculum the gynocentric belief systems. They could be religious in nature, they could be related to that. And you could kind of connect that in with the society. So it could be part of the chapter, or it could be its own chapter. And then, of course, the other part of gynocentric curriculum would, of course, be the explanation, like the justification for it. Like, why in the world would you want women running things versus men, or men running? Like, what's the reasoning? And so you'd have to outline basically all the horrible shit that men have done in the past, in the present, and are setting everybody up for in the future. And so kind of having that sort of, evidence-based argument, and then sort of going into some of their casual arguments and either debunking them or addressing how they're not going to solve the problems that are caused by male leadership around the planet. I think that should necessarily be a critical aspect of the curriculum. I don't think it's a particularly good idea to not have a justification. The next part is, I think there needs to be an entire chapter devoted to the different types of gynarchic visions and beliefs. In other words, that there are some gynarchists who are anarchists. And this is where you could bring in certain individuals who have already published works on it. So in other words, you can talk about just the different thought process. Like, there's community people, there's people that are big on wanting to bring it to the state or the federal level. You can introduce a plethora of this if you want to. There's actually, if you go to there's a Reddit Gynarchy group where somebody went through the trouble, and thank you to that person for putting down the 6 or 7 different types of Gynarchists that typically they observe. So you could link to different kinds of political schools of thought as it relates to it. Information could be included on that along with links. I think another part of gynocentric curriculum should entail all the gynocentric books, fiction or otherwise, and also the reason why it's taking place in fiction. In other words, like just the explanation to people, like what is up with the fetishistic stuff? Why are people doing that? Why is the Gynarchy stuff mostly been in fiction? Why are there all these different works? What's going on with certain cultures that are promoting the artworks? Like how are they being depicted? Like why are they being depicted that way? Why were they published when they were? What was the influence behind them? What was connected to them? Like who were these authors? What were they trying to get across? Like all this gold mine of information could be put in a curriculum. And that could tell you what happened. Another thing too, which you'll have to necessarily go into, is you'll have to devote an entire chapter on, like not necessarily on the arguments for a Gynarchy or for a gynocentric society, but you'd have to go into how is it that men came to run or rule things. And of course, there are discussions about efficiency. There's talks about the change over to an agricultural society and the influence that had on human beings. So there should be like at least a discussion on like sort of the overall big picture, like why is it that women came to be subjugated and so on, and then going into that information and then explaining why that there has been this almost gynocentric resurgence in the 21st century where we're seeing a rise in FLRs, a huge rise in femdom, unlike anything I think I've ever seen before. Even as a child, it's the content has skyrocketed. And of course, Gynarchy is becoming more receptive. There are some people who put it in their title and they have a lot of subscribers and they're not getting deleted. In other words, it's becoming over time a more acceptable, I don't want to say widespread acceptable, but it's become acceptable to the point where you can't get rid of us, no matter what you do. You could delete one and there's like 50 or 100 or whatever more, and they'll just keep coming at you. I think another part of gynocentric curriculum that's very, very critical is discussing all of the accomplishments that women and girls have made for the human species. In other words, what have they done? Like, for example, Ada Lovelace and so on and so forth. In other words, just educating people. So everything about it should be about the promotion of the political philosophy, but I feel like you have to kind of put the pieces together. So it really should just be a gynocentric textbook, but I think that we can make a curriculum out of this textbook, and then we can share this textbook with our people and say, okay, well, why this? You know, again, you could always do pamphlets too for shorter information that if you don't have the time and you need to convey more critical information with less words. But if you have the time to share a PDF file or a textbook that sort of communicates the information in a way that people can pick up on it and go, oh, this is like the gynocentric encyclopedia or something, or this is the gynocentric textbook of all gynocentric textbooks that basically goes over everything, that has all the information. And then so when you look up Gynarchy, it's right there. You know, you don't have the people who are interested in studying it from an academic perspective or want to apply it to their life somehow. In other words, that could be another part of the curriculum, like what is a Gynarchic household? What is that about? You know, why are people developing those households? What is the point? You know, why go about doing that? So there's a lot of potential for this idea, but what do you think? Not only about gynocentric books, but how would you structure a gynocentric curriculum? I do think that would help a long way towards mainstreaming some of the ideas and taking back, well, it's going past the 15-minute mark, but I think you know what I mean. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.